Welcome to the Beacon Way Executive Series podcast. Take a look behind the scenes of business and digital agency experience with Adrienne, Jennifer, and Ken. These award-winning executives of Beacon Media and Marketing share personal stories, deep insights, and hot takes, and even a few controversial perspectives on leadership and business in the current timing of the world. We are back with another episode of the Executive Series, and today's episode is all about prioritizing you. And I'm really excited for this subject, as you can imagine, as much as I love personal growth and fitness and all of those things. But I would love just to hear from you, Adrienne. What are some of the things that you put yourself first that might be against the grain to a lot of executives or business owners that they're like, wait, what? She does what? Because I think this is such an important topic, and I just don't think that we talk about it enough, or people are putting enough emphasis on how value that this can bring to the company, or your employees or your profit margin, whatever people are trying to focus on.
This one's definitely been an interesting journey for me, because for a long time I saw value in myself as a CEO, myself as a business owner, as executive, in how busy I was and how many tasks I got checked off that day and how many meetings I made it through that day. And it's that hustle culture thing. And I just, as much as I love what I do, I would do this all the time, every day, most of the time. But I was losing my joy in it. And what I've started to really embrace is that the higher level of things that I'm doing in the company, the more downtime I need. And I think it was maybe 2 years ago, Jen, where I was just like, I need 3 days off. And it was hard for me to admit that. Like, I can go really hard for a lot of hours, but I found when I took Friday, Saturday, and Sunday off to just come down, then I could come back and get so much more accomplished during those 4 days that I was really on. And what I found was there was a lot less wheel spinning. I was able to focus a lot more on what I needed to do. I wasn't getting decision fatigue at the same level. I was able to make better quality decisions faster when I literally made myself take 3 days off. And the thing that really pushed me into doing it in the first place and figuring out that I really needed this was actually my husband. He's just like, we don't get much of you. He's like, on a regular weekend, you spend pretty much all day Saturday trying to come down from your week, and you're still processing things that are going on during the week. Maybe we get a few hours Sunday morning. By Sunday afternoon, you're ramping back up for the next week. You're starting to think through your schedule. You're like, okay, I need to do this, and this is going on, and I need to coordinate this person. We might get 4 hours of you, really you. You're here, but you're not here. And that hit me really hard because my family, as much as my business is my passion, so is my family. And that was a hard truth to hear, that you're physically here, but you're off thinking about the business most of the weekend. And so now Fridays are more my day of coming down, and I get, all day Saturday. And I've put some other habits in place on Sunday where I have a certain time that I'm going to set aside to start gearing back up, to start looking at my calendar and doing that. And that's not until late on Sunday. And so when I find myself kind of starting to think about my week, it's like, nope, that's saved for a time block later today. I'm still here. I'm still doing things with the family. I'm still engaging. I'm having real conversations. I'm remembering the conversations that I'm having with my family. I mean, how terrible is that? Where they're like, oh yeah, we talked about this. And I'm going, no, you didn't. They're like, well, yeah, we talked about this, and this. And I'm going, I remember like a third of that conversation. So that was a bit of my wake up call that I needed to really change things to be able to do both things that I loved well. That's a bit of my answer to that. There's a lot more to it, but that's probably a good 10,000 foot view.
What about you, Jen? What's your take on prioritizing you?
It's definitely come more to a head in this last year, for sure, with my health. I've been reading. It's like when you're focused on something, then you start seeing it everywhere, and so I just saw a more recent one from Marcos Lemonis, who I haven't really seen his stuff in a while, but I really respect him. But he was just talking about that the weight of what you carry as a business owner, the pressure and the weight, the emotional piece of that is always right. You always know that you are responsible. You always are to blame and have that accountability for everything that could go wrong or does go wrong.
And goes right.
Goes right. Yeah, sometimes.
Sometimes.
But
a lot of times.
But I think I've really I ended up having anemia, as you guys know very well. This was diagnosed with that, and to the point that my wake up call, and I've had a couple wake up calls over the past 12 years, but this one for some reason just took a different hit for me. But my doctor just looked me in the face and was like, I don't know how you're getting out of bed in the morning. She's like, your numbers are so low, you should be in a hospital right now. And then the bigger piece that she said was that, I only see this type of behavior or this type of stubbornness and people that, in a very nice way, she said, are just not valuing themselves. They're putting everything else ahead of them. And she had some other things to say, but that was like kind of the overview of it. And I could not stop thinking about it because what she said was true. And I've made, or a piece of truth, I've made all these great strides and like, eating better and working out and reading and doing things that I actually love. But I recognized I still have this lie that if I was really resting and needing downtime, that there was something wrong with me. And I really believed that for whatever reason. And that has shifted. Like I went home yesterday. For whatever reason, I was really tired, kind of scared me a little bit. But I went to bed at like 8 because that's just what my body needed. And it was totally, and I just didn't feel terrible about it, right? Where normally I would be actually beating myself up that I wasn't doing enough. So I don't know if that's a great answer, but that's my reality for where I'm at. It's still something I'm very much in process with on this particular one. Because I love what I do too, and I love my family too. And so I always want to be present and active and doing all the things. And, we can't do all that. So what about you, Ken?
It's probably one of my most endearing subjects because I do very much value this at a very high level. It's a deep part of my identity. And I'm grateful that I've had a lot of great nurture around me in my life that's really kept that as a priority, because when I've faltered away from it, the effects are just way too damning on me. A quote that I think of, and I don't know who said it, but it's like, are people getting the best of you or are they getting the rest of you? And that resonates really deeply because I think there's a lot of times that if you're anything like I have been, and I know you guys have been in this exact same boat, and I know people listening too, is that when you're at work, you're thinking about your family or, something else. And then when you're with your family, you're thinking about work. And that is like a perfect encapsulation of if you're everyone's getting the rest of you, not the best of you. And so I have found that being selfish and putting yourself first is the most selfless thing that you can do in this world, because I believe that if you actually take care of yourself, like if the plane's going down, you got to put your oxygen mask on first before you put others, is the most important thing. And I think that's the paradigm shift that I would really want to encourage people to do is that saying no to people and saying yes to yourself more often actually brings more value to everyone else. You can't be the selfless mom who puts everyone else first because that's what's best for them, and then be burned out and stressed and angst at the end of the day. It doesn't work that way. Like you have to put yourself first. At the end of this day, you only have one life to live and you're the only one that's living it. And so why not take some control over the things you can control and make yourself better for it? The thing that I love about being healthy and fit and eating great food that gives you great energy is like, it's the one thing in this world you can't buy. And I love that, right? Like you can buy anything else. You can buy the nice clothes. There's so many things you can buy, but you cannot buy a fit body and a fit mind. And so I very much take care of my health through exercise, activity, hydration, nutrition, reading, journaling. Those things really encompass my ability to be my best, because when I'm doing that at my best, everyone else is getting my best. And I know the minute that I'm off, or like work is stressing me out more than it should, or stuff at home is like getting on my nerves, or I'm getting anxious about things, the first thing that I look into is, okay, well, how many times have I exercised this week? How many evenings have I read and journaled? And I can tell you more often than not, the times that those are less than more is the times that I'm feeling worse in every endeavor, both work and family. And so those are the areas that I focus most on. And luckily, I focus really hard on my self-awareness through journaling. And so you can really catch those sooner. And so instead of going 10 days, you go 5 days. And that makes a huge difference in the overall impact, both in your work relationships and family versus your at-home family.
Yeah, I think our entire culture, we've become so focused on the now and the immediate, and everything feels so urgent that things that used to be almost just set aside times that everyone agreed on, right? We were all going to take weekends off, or we were all going to, have this time set aside from 5 to 9 with our families. And that's all kind of been thrown out. Everything now is just very up in the air. And so you can be on all the time. It takes much more discipline and structure to not do that. Back to what you said about what money can't buy, I think that even if we just, like, the one takeaway from this podcast, if you could think about, like, what in your life can your job not buy? Can even your relationships not buy? Like, what actually brings you peace and joy and wisdom and those things? And that is your treasure right there. Like, that's, if you put your time there first. And I have the same exact experience, Ken. Like, when I don't do writing in the morning and meditation and spend time just like that process, even though it's really hard when I know all I have to do. But when I don't do that, if I go a week and skip that, I guarantee you my outcomes are not as good. I'm not showing up my best. I'm not even as present, right? Because I mean, there's this part of me almost like feeling like I'm not getting what I need. So when I don't have that part, then the rest of it suffers. But it feels counterintuitive. It does. It feels like there's so many demands, and this is just one more thing with time. But the outcome of that, I have enough experience now that I absolutely know that I know it's the difference between me having really good outcomes and just even enjoying what I do more and having better success. So it's better for Beacon. It's better for the company if I spend the time doing that.
Yeah.
One of my favorite sayings is life is the longest thing you'll ever do, right? Outside of maybe you're the legacy of your kids, because everyone says life is short, and I understand the motivation behind that statement. But I think about, like, when you run a race, especially if you're not conditioned for it, which a lot of the things we're talking about right now, very few people are like truly and like absolutely conditioned to live that type of life, is that you can run a race a lot faster if you run, and then the minute you start to get really fatigued, you stop and walk, then continue to try to push through and run and run and run. So if you walk and run through life, and when you're fatigued and you start to say no, or you start to calculate and slow down and rest a little bit, then you can actually run faster and cover more distance after you rest and when you're ready, versus just trying to push and run and run. And so I think I see a lot of people, how I connect this all together is I think a lot of people just try to run through life and run and run and run. But then you get so burnt out that this time span in that you have to rest and recover before you can start to run again disproportionately affects your outcomes than if you would just run and then you're like, man, I'm feeling a little achy, or this is starting to hurt, or man, I'm just like not making good decisions. Like you're talking, Adrienne, decision fatigue, and you just stop. You might not need to rest near as long, and then you can start running again and get more out of the next run.
Yeah.
And so that's always something that I've envisioned, in my life, and I've really encouraged other people to do, is to have permission to rest when you need it, because it's okay, because you're probably going to get back to running faster if you look at it that way.
Well, and back to something Jennifer said earlier, as CEOs, as business owners, as executives, we carry a lot. You carry the successes, you carry the failures. I mean, the amount of times we lose sleep over whether or not we're going to be able to make payroll, or again, trying to decide between, which way is the best way forward, that has a lot of inherent weight, whether you're in the moment or not. And as your company grows and it moves into different levels, that only gets heavier. It doesn't get lighter. And understanding that in some ways, the value that a business owner brings, that we bring as the company grows and evolves, is understanding that we need more downtime to be able to carry that extra weight. And we need more of those rests that you're talking about, Ken. We need to give ourselves permission to rest. And, there's a saying, you're going to basically don't ever stop. Even if you slow down to a walk, you keep walking, you don't stop. You don't put that down. And we don't ever put those weights down. But to give ourselves permission to take that time. And it's hard in our culture because we have this stupid hustle culture, this burnout culture where we glorify it. And it needs to stop. We need to stop doing this to ourselves. I look at a lot of how the European companies run, and I'm jealous. I feel like they've got it figured out way better than Americans do, to be honest. And I love it where there's a meme that circulates every once in a while, and it's like, the voicemail from the European business owner in the summer. Yeah, I'm out. I'll be out for a month, maybe two. Leave a voicemail. I'll get back to you when I can. And then you get the American business owner that's like, yeah, I'm out for 3 days. But I'll be checking voicemail and I'll be checking email and I'll get back to you right away. Like, that is so wrong. But I'm as guilty as the next person of embracing it and growing up in it and just doing it and killing myself and feeling guilty, like you were saying, Jen, of like taking time off. And so this is something I'm really excited about wrestling with and walking through and getting better at, is understanding that just like an actor or an actress, they study, they prep, they learn their lines, they practice their lines, all for maybe one play, 1 2-hour play. And then they rest. And they might have 2 or 3 plays in a row, but then the season's done. They are not working for a month or 2, but they were so on for that time that they were on. But they could be that on because they knew they had downtime coming. And that downtime rejuvenated them for them to prep again and be really, really on. The problem with so many executives is we're in that performance place all the time. And we never allow ourselves to have downtime to recoup. And the studies that are out there right now on what that does to our brains is scary.
Yeah.
And how much better our brains perform when we even give ourselves that downtime for our brains to process and get caught up. That was the one that really blew me away. They're like, we're never giving our brains time to get caught up, even with what we're learning and what we're processing.
Yeah.
And we have to give our brains even just that piece of it, downtime to get caught up.
Yeah. I do think that I was thinking of 2 things when you said that. One is just like the recent thing that we've come through with the Beacon standards and how hard all of us have been doing deeper work in the company. And I've been really just beating myself up. Like, why didn't I do this sooner? Why couldn't I have, and the truth is I did not have space. Like I really have looked at that and like, no, I was going from beginning to end of day with no space, no time to think about it. It's not like this stuff wasn't percolating in the back of my brain and I wasn't aware of it, but actually being able to truly set aside even a week of, more downtime, more thinking it through, going deeper, like the outcome is 10 times better than what I produced in the last couple of years, as far as I think it'll move the company forward. So I want to remember this, of how important this is to do that and to think of it that way. It still comes back to the outcomes are not improved by working to death. I mean, I know that Alex Hormozy, and I know other people say different things, like he's really big into work your weekends, you'll get ahead. Definitely Elon Musk has that same philosophy too. And I do think there's a time and a season. My husband's got a startup right now. He's working 80 hours a week and it's a startup, and that it's almost impossible at different seasons of owning a business that you're not going to have those times where you just are all in your action. You're on, right? It's your play. It's your time that you have to show
Yes.
up.
You are on stage.
You're
Yeah.
like kicking butt. But back to your point, I think what a lot of us do, and I know I've been guilty of this, hence the anemia, if you feel like you have to be on all the time and you never stop and rest, then actually it's diminishing return. You're not going to show up with your best at all.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, and this is like a whole other level of discipline and in shifting what you're doing is like, how are you decompressing? How are you resting? How are you filling your cup? I think that there's a lot of different ways to do it. Some people it's like, binging and watching Netflix for a couple hours. Other people, it could be going to the gym or going on a walk. We can't debate that there's one that is significantly better, both for your mental and physical health, that's going to bring better to your work than the other. Okay, I love to read. There's a big difference between reading like a really awesome professional or personal growth book versus like reading 50 Shades of Grey. Like, and again, I'm not demonizing like disconnecting. It's good to disconnect, but we only have so much time. So how are you disconnecting? And I think it's important that you balance the active disconnects that are really good for you and the mental disconnects if it is, watching Netflix. And I can binge on an easy docuseries or something like that, like anyone, but I think you have to monitor those and pay attention to those and get downtime, schedule downtime, but make sure that you're switching up your downtime in a way that's actually bringing value sometimes to you, right? Because that's the important thing. I think sometimes people maybe choose to take downtime, but maybe is their downtime that actually what's best for them? And sometimes I think it isn't. And so I think being able to figure out how you prioritize you in a way to be able to get that done is quite valuable.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would say that's self-awareness too. But so take out the good versus not good component, because I think we all know, like, if I do Netflix and black licorice, like that feels good in the moment, not going to be as happy tomorrow. Right. And I'm not saying I don't do that still once in a while, about once every 2 months now versus once a week before.
Yeah.
But I will say, like, when I became very self-aware that I could not turn my brain off, I mean, I couldn't even turn my brain off to read a book, even though I really wanted to, right? So I started developing techniques. One of them for me is actually going to a movie theater. Like, it doesn't work if I do it at home. I have to go to a movie where the entire environment doesn't allow me to be on my phone or to think about anything else. And usually an action movie is best. And it will shift my brain out of work mode. And I'll stop thinking about work and I'll stop worrying about problems and I'll just be able to enjoy. And then I can go do something actually positive. So I think you do have to know your own thing, like your own way that you're wired of like, what are the things that are actually going to help you turn off?
I know it's bad when I'm trying to read a really good self-improvement book or business book and I find myself 3 pages in and I can't remember what they've said.
Exactly.
It's like,
I have so done that.
I actually need to go binge on, I need to go read something light and fluffy and ridiculous.
Yeah.
Until my brain can calm down enough that I can actually retain anything from this, something I really want to do.
Right. But still, it might you still might be in that work mode, right? Or like for me, like if I do something that's like intense activity, that's why I love certain types of workouts. I cannot think about anything else. Right. I mean, it's the best, right? You're so focused on, I don't want to die right now and lifting this weight that's such a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really important for people to develop that self-awareness. And I think, and I get that. Like, I mean, having the ADHD at the level that I had, sometimes I didn't even want to be in my own thoughts. Right. So I just chose to scroll or chose to watch Netflix because it was easier to do that than be in my own thoughts.
Yeah.
But what I found is that if you had the right self-awareness, that you can make those thoughts and turn those into major actions where you could get 10 times out of something little if you were able to do it. And again, that takes a lot of refinement to do it. I would say for people that maybe if they are in that space, because I know I was, and Jen, you suggested that too, is that finding whatever that is for you and knowing that if you do get to a light and fluffy book, or you do watch an action movie, you don't need to watch 3. You don't need to read 6 chapters.
Yes.
Maybe you only need to do 1 and then reset back into the time. Because again, we don't all have a crazy amount of time to dedicate to these things. And I will tell you that you just have to figure out what those resets are. Me figuring out what mine was is turning on some just classical music, like one Midnight Overture from Mozart, 6-minute song could be the complete reset where I could get back and focused in such a good way versus watching an hour and a half movie. So I just gained, an hour and 20 potential minutes of more productivity in a positive way, if it is a workout or whatever, and being able to just be self-aware and find out, okay, what resets well, how productive was that? How good did I feel? And just becoming really self-aware and having conversations with yourself. And you have to be able to turn off the distractions to be able to do that. And that's the scary part, is a lot of people don't want to do that. And I encourage people to spend some time in your own thoughts, because that's where actual creativity comes from, not just scrolling through social media or watching Netflix or anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate the different perspectives on this, because I know that you and I, we're all very different personalities, and hopefully people can see that there's a lot of different ways that you can prioritize yourself, which will then actually bring more joy and better work to our companies, which is obviously the goal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining the Beacon Way Executive Session. New episodes drop every week. Make sure you never miss one. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.